so as you can see from that little intro there, the tractor will want to idle great. Whenever I rev it up to about 15 to 1800, it starts mixing up the cylinders, or what I believe they refer to as a diesel hazing. But when it does that, the smokestack, exhaust, whatever you want to call it, is just puffing white smoke. And in a diesel, white smoke is either a blown head gasket, which hopefully God we don't have since we just put it together, or unburnt diesel fuel, which to me, I believe it is unburnt diesel because it literally burns my eyes to the point I can't stand here in the chicken house, and I literally have to leave until the cloud disappears. So I'm thinking that my problem is the injectors. I put new nozzles on them, which I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is the Chinese pop tester, because the gauge on it is a no-name brand gauge. It's probably inaccurate. So what I'm going to do, but I'm going to have to pull the valve cover off, and I'm going to pull this number 4 injector, and that's just so I can hopefully swivel out the little tube inside there and pull that injector out. And I got a new gauge on my pop tester that's made in Brazil, and I'm going to run that injector on the pop tester and see if it's popping off at 2750 psi. I got a feeling it's popping off higher than that, which is causing more fuel to be dumped into the engine, which is causing my hazing and my smoking problem. So I'm going to go ahead and get that pulled out, and I'm not going to bore you with me disassembling this, because I'm going to have to pull the tank probably. Valve cover is a definite, and number 4 injector out. So let me get that done, and then we'll go check it on the tester. I got the Brazil gauge on here. This is actually a Subaru drain plug off an oil pan, because it's the M20 by 1.5 thread. I drilled it out and tapped it for a 1/4 NPT. This particular thread sealer is not good enough for the pressures that this is going to see. However, this one is. It's a Loctite 5452. I put a little bead around the threads and stuck it in there, and 10 minutes later it was set up and ready to roll. So use that. With that being said, this is the 3rd injector I'm testing at the moment. The first injector popped off at 2800 psi, which is within the 50 psi margin. The second one was at 2750 psi, which is at spec. And then this is number 3. Popping off 2600 psi. So this one's about 150 low. And so I'm not the smartest on how these work. At 2600, I'm thinking you're either open too soon and you're dumping excess diesel, but I could be wrong. It might be that if you open at 28, you're putting more diesel in, which to me kind of makes sense. But if the injector holds open too long at a lower pressure, maybe it's putting more in. I'm not sure. I'm not a diesel mechanic. So I'm going to adjust this one back to 2750 psi on this gauge, and then I'll go get injector number 4, which is right now, this will actually be cylinder number 1. This is cylinder number 2, but you know, whatever. But I'm going to get it. We'll check it and see what happens. And once I get all these done, I'll get the tractor put all back together. I'm going to relash the valves since I had to pull the rocker arms off, and we'll try running it again. If it still messes up, I'm going to have to pull the injection pump because something in there is messed up. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So for starters, I'm going to go ahead and pull this off because I got to pull that cap back off and tighten it up a little bit. And I cannot loosen it on
the tester here because it just wants to bend it. Alright, so just like in my original video, we're going to turn it clockwise to increase the pressure, counterclockwise to decrease. I don't remember what the spec was per turn, but I just added a quarter turn. Too far. Back it up, 1/8 of a turn. It's about 2750-ish, roundabout. That's kind of towards the lower end. So that's where I'm going to leave that one. I'll get the cap put back on it and go get the last injector. Alright, last injector. It's kind of like 2650 to 2700 psi. So I'll jack that one up just a little bit as well. So to recap, I had one that was accurate at 2750, one that was high at 2800, and two that were low around 2650, 2700. So they were kind of all pretty much within a spec, but out at the same time, because spec is 2750 plus or minus 50 psi. So I was out 100 to 150 psi. Whether or not that is enough to cause the problem I have, I don't know, but we will soon find out. Okay, and I'm going to turn this one about a quarter turn for starters because it's kind of low. It's 27, 28, 29. It's too much. $27, $28. It's just past 2700 psi. Okay, so with that just past 2700, I'm within the 50 psi range. So I'm going to leave that one there. And what's odd about it is it's almost back to where it initially was. It might be a hair tighter, but it ain't by much. So I'll get these all put back in the tractor, get tractor started back up, and we'll see what it does. I put the injectors back in, fuel tank's bolted down, everything's ready to roll. Now, I went ahead and set the injectors at 2800 psi. And the reason for that, I did a little bit of research, because like I say, I'm not, a diesel mechanic by any means. But when you have a low pop-off pressure, your pump does not have to build as much pressure. So therefore, it's not as long of a time frame for that injector to fire each cycle. So, since there's not as long to build pressure, with that injector open, there's a slightly more duration. So with that, you're firing sooner and for longer. So you're putting in a little more fuel that is not atomized as well, because as you know, when stuff gets higher pressure, you like think of a garden hose, when you hold it, fans out better, atomizes better. The higher pressure will atomize it better. So with the lower pressure, you're going to have bigger drops of diesel fuel that are not atomized as well. You're going to have a slightly advanced timing and probably a little more fuel period in the system. So that's going to create a bunch of white smoke from unburnt diesel, and it's going to burn your eyes. So I set mine at the top end of the range. So everything's back installed. I'm going to fire it up, and I want you to watch the exhaust that comes out of this thing, because I can tell you that this is not my issue, which unfortunately is going to mean the injection pump is going to have to come back off, which is kind of a good thing, kind of a bad thing. Good thing being, I will be able to get a better video, because all the videos that are out there are not that great, including mine, because my initial one was shot on a cell phone, and I think it was actually the first video I did, so it's not very good. So there's probably something wrong in this pump, because the motor's completely rebuilt. We know the motor's good. So with all that talking out of the way, let me fire this thing up. I'm going to point the camera up towards the exhaust pipe, and then I'll rev it up and down a little bit and let you see what it's doing. So as you can see at idle, which is 600 RPMs, it smokes a little bit. However, whenever I revved it up to 1200 RPMs, you can probably pick up the tractor kind of lugging. Like you hear it like, I don't really know a good way to describe it other than lugging, but you can hear it. And then whenever I rev it, you'll see it throw a lot of gray smoke, which a diesel will throw some gray smoke when you rev it. However, not that bad. And I'll walk over here to the 861 and fire it up and let you see how it does as well. So, with the way this thing is acting, since I have the injector set right, the only other way that fuel's getting in here is the injection pump. So, the injection pump has to be the source of my issues. I'll have to go back through it. So now let's take a field trip. Alright. So here's the 861. RPM idle. That was about 1700. As you see, very little smoke came out. So this one's burning a lot more efficient, a lot more cleaner. So cleaner burn, more efficient, more power. That's what we want. This tractor also had the engine rebuilt. I have 164 hours on it. So the 4000 should be the same as this one. The only issue that's left is the injection pump. So that's where I'm going to end this video for now. Well, not for now, but that's where this video is going to end. So thanks for watching on this, figuring out what's wrong with the 4000, and look forward to the injection pump take 2 video.